Hare Krishna, Anandarup Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Haribol, Haribol.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Pranam.
Nandos Pranam. Nice, nice Prabhu. Nice to see you. So whenever you are ready, devotees will be joining, I think, in the next few minutes if you want to do a little bit of Radha Madhava. And then, yeah, so take us through these three types of happiness. So over to you.
I will try. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Givaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Rajaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Radhe. Jaya Radhe Shyam Jaya Radhe Shyam Jaya Radhe Shyam Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Vrindavan Dham Jaya Vrindavan Dham Jaya Vrindavan Dham Jaya Vrindavan Dham. Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol जय श्री श्री राधा माधव भगवान की जय श्रीला प्रभुपाद जी महाराज की जय निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम ज्ञानातिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाजनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरु वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथामृतां तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पदान् सहगणालिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुण सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपिश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचना गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितनाम पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा ओम हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं वासं ततं उदीरयेत् श्रीमतं साक्षात् कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवण कीर्तन हृदयन्ताः स्तोये भद्राणि विदन्ति सुरसतं नष्टप्रासभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भागवतीर्थमाश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः Hare Krishna. So today's topic is three modes of happiness, three types of happiness, sorry. And we'll be speaking from the verses of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, 36, 37, 38, and 39. So we'll be reading, we'll be starting with 36. Sukham vidani trividam sunu me bharatarshava abhyasadramate yatra dukhantam cha nigacchati. 37. Yatadagre vishamiva pariname amritopamam tat sukham satvikam proktam atma buddhi prasadajam. 38. विषयेन्द्रिया समयोगा यततदाग्रिमृतोपमं परिणामे विषमेव तत्सुखं राजसंस्मृतम्. 39. यदग्रे चानुबोध्य च सुखं मोहनमात्मनः निद्रालस्य परं धोतं तत्तामसम् उदारितम्. Verse 36. Sukham tvidanim trividam shunu me bharatarshava vyasajramate yatra dukhantam cha nigacchati. Translation by His Divine Grace Shri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O best of Bharatas, now please hear from me about the three kinds of happiness by which the conditioned soul enjoys and by which he sometimes comes to the end of all distress. Purport. O conditioned soul, a conditioned soul tries to enjoy material happiness again and again. Thus he chews the chewed, but sometimes in the course of such enjoyment, he becomes relieved from the material entanglement by association with a great soul. In other words, a conditioned soul is always engaged in some type of sense gratification. But when he understands by good association that it is only a repetition of same thing, and he is awakened to his real Krishna consciousness, he is sometimes relieved from such repetitive so-called happiness. Translation of verse 37. That which in the beginning may be just like poison, but at the end is just like the nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization, is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. Purport. In the pursuit of self-realization, one has to follow many rules and regulations to control the mind and the senses, and to concentrate the mind on the self. All these procedures are very difficult, bitter like poison, but if one is successful in following the regulation and comes to the transcendental position, he begins to drink real nectar and he enjoys life. Translation of verse 38. The happiness which is derived from contact of the senses with their objects, and which appears like nectar at first, but poison at the end, is said to be of the nature of passion. Purport. A young man and a young woman meet, and the senses drive the young man to see her, to touch her, and to have sexual intercourse. In the beginning, this may be very pleasing to the senses, but at the end, or after some time, it becomes just like poison. They are separated, or there is divorce, there is lamentation, there is sorrow, etc. Such happiness is always in the mode of passion. Happiness derived from a combination of senses and sense objects is always cause of distress and should be avoided by all means. Translation of verse 39. And that happiness which is blind to self realization, which is delusion from beginning to end, and which arises from sleep, laziness, and illusion, is said to be the nature of ignorance. Purport. One who takes pleasure in laziness and in sleep is certainly in the mode of darkness, ignorance. And one who has no idea how to act and how to not to act is also in the middle of mode of ignorance. For the person in the mode of ignorance, everything is illusion. There is no happiness either in the beginning or at the end. For the person in the mode of passion, there might be some kind of ephemeral happiness in the beginning and at the end distress. But for the person in the mode of ignorance, there is only distress both in beginning and at the end. So we'll try to discuss these kind of happiness that Krishna is mentioning here. Three kind of happiness by which conditioned soul enjoys and by which he sometimes come to end of all distress. It's a very interesting topic, and it's kind of a awakening call if one may understand this deeply. Prabhupada is, I think, very clearly mentioned in his purports what a conditioned soul is trying to do, and what three kind of happinesses are, and three kind of mode of nature are, and how at the end is all distress if one is not understanding the real reason of the human life. So I think the best way to describe all these kind of modes and nature and modes of nature and these three kind of happiness is if we take one by one. So we'll start with the mode of goodness, and we'll try to understand, and we'll take various examples from different tikas of different acharyas, and we'll try to discuss and do some charcha here. In the process, if I may speak something that is not relevant, please forgive me. And I seek blessings of all the senior Vaishnavas that are present on this call to allow me to speak something and discuss a little in their presence. So, so Krishna here is instructing Arjuna. He's saying that, oh, best of Bharatas, now please hear from me about three kinds of happiness by which the conditioned soul enjoys, and by which he sometimes come to end of all distress. I think in this verse, the most important word here, sukham tvidanim tridham shrunu se me bhartar shabha abhyasad ramate yatraha dukhantam chanigachati. Abhyasad. Abhyasat is very, very important. What does the word abhyasat mean? Abhyasat means by practice. By practice of what? The practice of bhakti, practice of associating with like-minded people, devotees. Here in this verse, Prabhupada has said very clearly, a conditioned soul tries to enjoy material happiness again and again, thus chewing the chew. Who is who is chewing the chew? We are a person who is in mode of passion, mode of ignorance, or mode of goodness. Although there is some hope when they are in different modes, but a person in mode of ignorance or deeply in passion or deeply in goodness is definitely chewing the chew. But some, Prabhupada then mentions again, but sometimes in the course of such enjoyment, he becomes relieved. But how will he become relieved? He is becoming relieved from material engagement, entanglement by association, by practicing his sadhana, by association. So association here is mentioned with great souls, with pure devotees, with various right sources like reading Bhagavad Gita, reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And again, Prabhupada mentioned here that, but when he understands by good association, that is the only repetition of same thing, and he is awakened to his real Krishna consciousness. So in this verse 36, Abhyasad ramate yatraha dukhantam cha nigachati. Abhyasad ramate, that means that by practice, ramate, one enjoys where of distress at the end also he gains. So if we read verse 37, yatad dagre vishamivaha, that means that which is the beginning may be just like poison. Vishamiva, visham means poison, eva means like poison, and agre in the beginning. So these two verses are interlinked very nicely. And in Srimad Bhagavatam as well, in Canto 1, chapter 2, I think verse 20th, evam prasanam manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. That means, thus, established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the state of liberation from all material association. So, in this verse, what I've linked, Prabhupada has mentioned very clearly that many thousands of ordinary men, but one fortunate man endeavors for perfection in life. Mostly men are conducted by a mode of passion, ignorance, and thus they are engaged always in lust, desire, hankering, ignorance, and sleep. So here in Bhagavad Gita also, Prabhupada is mentioning, in the pursuit of self-realization, one has to follow many rules. There are very many examples in Srimad Bhagavatam and in different Puranas where if you are on the path of self-realization, the initial stage is very hard. It's very, very hard. It's like almost like drinking poison. So, for example, in our daily life, when we are chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we lose interest. We look at our clocks, our watches all the time. Oh, this class or this lecture or this chanting. Oh, we've done one round. We've got another 15 to go, another 14 to go. So it's almost like poison because it's something that we don't want to do because our nature, although it's Satchidananda Vigraha, but we are not purified because we are in the influence of three modes of nature. So hence we are into Vishaya Bhoga. Vishaya Bhoga means that we are into material contamination, we are into material enjoyment, sense gratification a lot. So that's what Prabhupada is saying. All these procedures are very difficult, bitter like poison, in the beginning. But if one is successful in following these regulations and comes to a transcendental, then he'll come to a transcendental position, and then he begins to drink real nectar, and then thus he will enjoy his life. So here, enjoy life means once we have realized, we are self-realized, and we have come to a transcendental position and an understanding that okay, I'm I'm not this body, I'm this soul. Only then you will understand and realize, and then hence you'll be able to connect your senses to the lordship, or to the services, or to the devotion service. um, I mean, there are a lot of examples in Srimad Bhagavatam where initial initial stages of self-realization have been very hard. Very strong tapa has been done by various um, great souls like Dhruva. Like Dhruva Maharaj, he was only 5-year-old boy, but he went to the jungle, he went to forest on instructions of Narada Muni, and he did a lot of sacrifice. But at the end, he enjoyed his life. He began to drink real nectar because um, after self-realization, although his tapa was very intense to the extent where he was on his one leg, and while he was chanting Om Namo Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya mantra given to him by Narada Muni, the whole, it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole Swargloka was trembling, shaking, because his practices were so strong. So, this is one of the great example. And another great example is Parikshit Maharaj, that we should not forget that at the time of distress, when he was about to leave his body, he was given a ultimatum of 7 days. And what did he do? He left everything and he surrendered himself. And that is again, in a mode of goodness. And although from the outside the great souls may appear as a normal human being, but from the inside they've got bhakti, the plant of bhakti, the seed of bhakti, that grows, that climbs. And again, that comes with when we understand by good association, and when we come onto that platform of realization that um, abhyasat ramate yatraha, that when we have done that sacrifice and we are doing the practices that is recommended by authoritative sources, then these two make more sense, because then you will understand that the real happiness is in devotional life only. Although our body, our mind hankers for a material engagement all the time, but then we'll realize by the abhyasat that okay, by the practices and by the association, that that's it, that is not the real happiness. Moving forward in verse 38, here Prabhupada is saying in his purport, a mode of passion. He's talking about mode of passion. And the translation is that happiness which is derived from contact of the senses with their objects, and which appears like a nectar at first but poison at the end, is said to be the nature of passion, which is very, very important. A lot of acts, a lot of things that we do in daily life are in mixture of either a passion, mode of goodness, or mode of ignorance. So here, the key point is the key word is in this text. It says Vishayendriya Samayogad Yat Tad Agre Mritopamam. So he's saying Vishaya, of the object of the senses, right? And the main word here is Pariname Vishamiva. Parinama means that what is the result? The result is Vishamiva, that you are getting poison. And it appears like poison. But then Tat Sukham Rajasam Smritam. That happiness is in the mode of passionate, and it's not considered to be good. So Let's take example from again Bhagavad Gita in chapter 5:22. Ye hi samsparaja bhoga dukha yogalaya evate. It means that an intelligent person does not take part in sources of misery, which are due to contact with material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have beginning and an end. So the wise man does not delight in them. And in Srimad Bhagavatam as well, this is one of my favorite verses actually. Canto 5, Rishabha Uvacha, Canto 5, chapter 5, verse 1, is the Lord Rishabhadev is instructing his sons, saying, Nayam deho deha bhajam nraloke. That means, I will read out to you. The translation is very, it's an awakening call for us. Lord Rishabdev told his sons, my dear boys, all the living entities who have accepted material body in this world, one who has been awarded this human form, please note this word that translation says, who has been awarded this human form, should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs that eat stool. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains this position, he attains eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. So, here in this translation, there are a lot of important words that Rishabdev is telling his son. The first one is that human life has been awarded. Here is the key to understand that we have been awarded this human life, and what are we using it for? Just ask this question to yourself. We have been given this human life. We are so fortunate. We've got all the senses working, hands, eyes, ears, nose, everything is working fine. But what are we using it for? We are simply using it for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs who eat stool. So this verse is, I understand this verse can be a little bit blunt, or it can be a little bit straightforward. But if we don't realize Krishna consciousness in this birth, then what's the point of us being awarded this human form? There is no point. Yes, we can talk on the surface that everything is good. Yes, you chant Hare Krishna. Oh, yes, everything is good. You'll be purified. But we have to dig deeper. We have to understand. We have to remove our anarthas and our samskaras that have been built in the wrong way. The impressions, samskaras mean impression that have been on our mind that have left a deeper impact, and hence we are using our senses not to purify them, but to degrade them even more. And then Rishabdev is saying to his sons, one should engage in penance and austerity. Penance and austerity, right? Penance and austerity are very important because we've just spoken in verse 37, and Prabhupada has mentioned in verse 36 in his translation, in his purport, that in the pursuit of self-realization, one has to follow many rules and regulations. Yes, tapa is hard. Tapa is very, very hard. Who likes to have better medicine? But what is the end result? That you become better. The whole point of medicine is that, yes, it may be bitter at the beginning, but at the end, you will be fine. You'll be awarded. You will be in a better place. You'll be fit and fine. You'll have the transcendental senses, not material senses anymore. So another example of nature of passion I must mention is a very famous katha, Ajamil. Although he was a born and brought up Brahmana, but there is a fine difference. I will tell you what that difference is. Please listen to this carefully. So, what did Ajamil do? Ajamil, I think, story is very, very common and very popular. Everyone does mention here and there, and but there is a lot of learning points from that story. So, Ajamil was born and brought up Brahman, and just to give you a bit of background and in a nutshell, what happened exactly. So Ajamil, being born and brought up Brahman, practices his early life was practicing mantras, reciting shlokas, and very strict rules and regulations. But then one may ask, oh, he has followed rules and regulations, but what was the end result? The end result was totally different. But no, there was a little favor that was done to him through the association, um, through the mercy of sages, that his son was named Narayana. And due to chanting of Narayana constantly, his heart got purified. And when he was on the end, on the deathbed, what happened? He was still chanting Narayana. Yes, he was unconscious. He was unconscious call, but since he was calling the word Narayana, Vishnu Duta come, and they came, and so did the Yamaduta came. So they came at the same time. And now imagine you being in that position where you've got Yam pass in your neck, and Yamadutas at one side and Vishnu Dutas at one side. Vishnu Dutas are saying that we have to save this man because he chanted Narayana, and Yamadutas are showing him the whole history of this man, where he's sleeping with Vaishyas, prostitutes, and he's kicked his parents out, and he's got all he does is loot, gamble, and kill people just for profit. So all the qualities of asura he's following, although he was born and brought a Brahmin. But now the question arises: one may ask that, hang on, he was a Brahmana, right? He was doing so many practices in his early life. He was brought up in a strict environment where he was reciting shlokas, he was practicing his Brahmanical culture very, very precisely, very nicely. Then why did he deviate from the path? But now there is a fine line between um, the path of bhakti and karma kanda. There's a very, very fine line. So now when you practice the practice of bhakti, the bhakti prema will come on the surface. And what will happen? You will not get degraded because you've got a deeper knowledge. But whereas if you're practicing something that has no deeper knowledge, you're just practicing for sake of it because your father or your mother have told it, that will not have the deeper roots. If that doesn't have a deeper root, there's no foundation. It's like making a house with no foundation. It will collapse. So you have to understand this, that when you start practicing bhakti yoga, then what happens? The roots become deeper, and slowly by studying scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and other scriptures, what happens is that root takes a deeper foundation to the fact that we understand that the relation between us and the Paramatma, Bhagavan, Krishna, is of love and devotion, that we are a dasa dasa anudasaha, that we are the servant of the servant of the servants. And especially that verse, Naham Piparo Nacha Narupati, Nachi Vaidruna Sudraha. So that was chanted by Lord Chaitanya in front of Lord Jagannath. When he saw Jagannath for the first time, he chanted that verse, that I am not a Shudra, I'm not a Brahmana. By my body, I've got no foundation. I've got no recognition. The only recognition I have, that I'm the servant of the servant of the servant. Dasa dasa anudasaha. So we have to understand. So that's what happens when we practice bhakti yoga. And now in Ajamil's story, what has happened is that although he has been practicing Brahmanical culture from a long time, all his youth age, all his young age, has been practicing and reciting of the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, all the Vedas, but there is no understanding that bhakti yoga is needed. Bhakti yoga, that's why bhakti yoga is very, very important. That's why we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's the easiest process that has been given to us in the day of Kali Yoga. We don't have to go to forest, we don't have to do anything. We just have to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra day in and day out in any situation, and we will be liberated. Yes, although it's not, the liberation is in our hands. The more sincerely we chant, the more sincerely we get the results. There's I was hearing a lecture just this morning, and in that lecture, Prabhuji was mentioning, it was an ISKCON Pune lecture that I was hearing, and Prabhuji was mentioning that in Bhakta Rasamrita Sindhu, there is a quotation that when you put something into your japa, your love and devotion, that's what you will get out of it. So if you are just putting the mechanical process, and you're skipping the whole in the mantra, you're just chanting to get your 16 rounds done because you've promised that to Prabhupada, then the result will be that only. So there's a very fine difference between what you get and what you put, what you get. So if we are putting a sincere effort in our japa, then only we'll get the result, and then only we'll realize the prema for the Lord, the love for the Lord. So coming back to the topic of this this the three nature of three kinds of happiness, and verse 38. So this is what I've derived from my research and what I've learned from it. So coming to the last verse 39, this is again very important verse because this is a kind of a conclusion of all the three modes of nature and three kind of happiness that is Krishna was mentioning in verse 36. So the last one says, Yadagre chanubandhe cha sukham mohanam atmanaha nidra alasya pramadotam yat tamasam udahartam. So in this verse again there's one key word. So this keyword tells us what this verse means and what indication we are getting from this verse. And the translation says that, and that happiness which is blind to self-realization, which is delusion from the beginning to the end, and which arises from sleep, laziness, and delusion, is said to be the nature of ignorance. So nidra alasya pramadotam. Pramadot is very, very important word. Pramad means illusion. Illusion is something that is not there, right? So when I'm saying, oh, this world is beautiful, this world is full of happiness, full of love, and full of devotion, but that is not true. But in material world, that is not present. Where is love these days? There is no love these days. People are hating each other. People want it to be more isolated, and people just are greedy, lusty. So that is not true. That is illusion. Illusion is something that is not, and so that is very important here. And even in purport, there is one line that Prabhupada mentioned is very, very important. Please listen to this carefully. One who takes pleasure in laziness and in sleep is certainly in the mode of darkness, ignorance, and one who has no idea how to act and how not to act is also in mode of ignorance. For the person in the mode of ignorance, everything is illusion. There is no happiness either in the beginning or at the end. For the person in the mode of passion, there might be some kind of happiness in the beginning and at the end, and distress. But for the person in mode of ignorance, there is only distress both in beginning and at the end. You have to understand this. So this line is very important. One who takes pleasure in laziness. And Prabhupada mentioned one who has no idea how to act and how not to act. So let's think about it. If you are in ignorance, right, what kind of activities involve ignorance? Drinking, right, meat eating. These are all ignorance because you don't know how to act and you don't know how to not act because you're basically an animal. So that is what Prabhupada is, the deeper meaning of this verse is that one who takes pleasure in laziness, and laziness we can see that is increasing in this day and age every second by second. You want something, but you don't want to put any effort towards. That's laziness. You wanna from our day-to-day life, you wanna get ready. Like just for today, I was just contemplating, oh, should I wear Vaishnava? Oh, it's a Zoom class. Why should I wear? But I was like, no, I've just read one who takes pleasure in laziness. I don't want to be in mode of goodness, even if it's Zoom or not Zoom. If I'm giving a class, I have to wear traditional clothes. If I'm serving deities, I have to wear traditional clothes to serve the deities. That is what we need in our daily life. We need a little bit of reminder of these 3 or 4 verses every day. That hang on, am I being in mode of passion? Am I being in mode of ignorance? Am I being in mode of goodness? And that will be an awakening call for all the devotees and non-devotees and people who are trying to be on part of bhakti. But this verse has really inspired me to do a little bit more, go an extra mile on my everyday sadhana, everyday basis. Um, so, what kind of activities involve mode of ignorance? Now, we were mentioning meat eating, alcohol, drinking. These all are ignorance. They are technically saying that they can feel the sun, but there is no sun. So they're covering their eyes and saying there is no sun. So that's pretty much what mode of ignorance is. You don't want to admit to something that is present on this earth, or that is present for the rest of it, but for not for you. So illusion, that's what Prabhupada is saying. Illusion, and also that is what Krishna is saying. Nidra alasya pramadata. Pramada is a very, very important word in this verse. So if we look back on what we have read, what we have understood, I think I will tell you a summary of everything what we have done. People who have joined late or who have missed something. So in verse 36, we were reading. There was a foundation. This was the foundational verse where Krishna is saying to Arjuna, "O best of Bharata, now please hear from me about these 3 kind of happiness, by which condition souls enjoy, and by which he sometimes comes to an end of all distress." So now 3 kind of happiness that are mentioned not in this verse, but in the following verses 37, 38, 39. First, mode of goodness, then mode of passion we discussed, and then mode of ignorance, where mode of goodness was described by Prabhupada and by Krishna to Arjuna, that self-realization, and also when you do tapa, and when you do in verse 36, Krishna is saying abhyasa ramate. That means you need to ramate means you need to engage in abhyasa of what? Devotional activity. Abhyasa means practice, practice of bhakti yoga, and then bhakti yoga, and then this is what we drive. And we were talking about verse 20th, text 20th from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 2, where Krishna is saying evam prasanna manaso. That means the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by the contact of devotional service. So again, this is here. If we were to go a little bit deeper, dig deeper in this Prabhupada has mentioned in his purport that the devotee is already a Brahmana by action. Please listen to this. Devotee is already a Brahmana by action, but that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahmana has become a Vaishnava. In fact, to be actually in the transcendental state, a pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. Brahmana means Brahma. Okay. And in the material state, even a Brahmana is also conditioned soul, because although a Brahmanical stage, the conception of Brahman or transcendent is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. I think what we were discussing is mentioned by Prabhupada here. We were discussing in verse 38. We were giving example of Ajamil, where the Brahmanical knowledge, the scientific knowledge of Supreme Personality of Godhead was lacking. Hence, that Brahmana fell down, and he was engaged in some illicit activities, and activities that was not authorized by the sources. So that's what the second verse was coming up to, was the nature of passion, and the happiness which is derived from the contact of senses with their object, and which appears to be the nectar at first, but at the end it is said not to be the nature of passion. Sorry. So I think from everyday example as well, we can realize that if something that we're doing involves a lot of passion or a lot of ignorance, or something that we're doing in mode of passion, we normally it goes the other way. It doesn't go the way that we want it to go, because we are not keeping Krishna in the center, because the main element is missing, that is bhakti is missing. So sometime I think this is a very relevant example here. Sometime when we cook, oh, today I want to eat this. Today I want to eat this. I want to eat this. You see how we are, let me cook this. So these words are saying that I want to eat this, not, oh, today for the Lordship I should cook this. I should try to cook this, and maybe this will please them. So, see, these two statements have two different meanings to it altogether, and two different modes to it. One is a little bit of goodness, where we are keeping Krishna in the center and we're saying, today for Bhagwan, we are going to cook this. But the other statement was, I want to cook this, and then we'll offer. So you see, there's a big difference between the both stories. So we have to be very careful how our thought process and how our mind processes the statement. And also, I recently heard that you should not trust senses whatsoever, because the moment we trust our senses, um, we either lose an element of bhakti, or we fall down. So we have to be very careful. Uh, there are a lot of examples actually when we trust our senses and things go south. So we have to be very careful not to trust our senses in anything, because senses are under the influence of three modes of nature, and they're normally wrong. We say this is something, but it's always something else. So it's better to because if your senses are wrong, then what will it'll affect your mind, and your mind will then affect your intelligence, and then intelligence will become into action. So you have to be careful that not to trust your senses at all. And if your senses are saying, oh no, let me do this, you give it a shake a little bit, and give it a slap and say, no, let's not do this. Question yourself, will this increase my Krishna consciousness? If it will not, then I should not be doing this. um, I personally asked this question a lot to myself. uh, okay, let me see this for 2 seconds, or let me do this for 2 seconds. But then before doing that action, I asked myself, will it increase bhakti? If it will not increase my bhakti, there's no point me doing that, because then it'll bring down bhakti rather than taking it up. So we should try to learn from these examples. And so the last verse was saying that the happiness which is blinding of self-realization and is delusion from beginning to the end, and which arises from sleep, laziness, and delusion, is said to be nature of ignorance. So the last one was nature of mode of ignorance. So ignorance is, again, we were mentioning that ignorance is actually quite the dangerous mode of nature in a way, because if you are taking pleasure, like Prabhupada was mentioning in his purport, we also spoke that the one who takes pleasure in laziness, the word taking pleasure in laziness is very important here, because if you are taking pleasure in something that will decrease our bhakti, then it's not good. Then we have to be very careful. Um, so I think it's 10 to 2 now. Any questions or any comments, please, I'll try to answer those. And I humbly request all the Vaishnavas that if I have offended anyone by saying anything, please forgive me. And thank you, God Nataraj Prabhu, for giving me this opportunity to speak on this wonderful topic. And I know this is less time to explain what all this is, but I've tried my best. So please let me know if I can answer, or I can if anyone can include some more comments, that'll be very, very nice to hear. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Anandarupa Prabhu. I appreciate it. a nice topic to start in the new year. So far, New Year has been very productive for ISKCON Manchester. On the New Year day, our Radha Mohan Prabhu gave a class. So his message was, see how we can become a better devotee. And yesterday we discussed Dhruv Maharaj, and you nicely quoted that example today. Dhruv Maharaj, he took so much pain, but he drank the nectar.
Yes.
He drank the nectar. So people in general of this age, they want to drink nectar first.
Yes.
Rather than walking, and then that becomes poison, unfortunately. So that was a very productive yesterday. It was very nice. Whole Dhruv Maharaj chapter was discussed thoroughly, and today we have another wonderful session. It's a difficult topic. I can say that certainly you've done a good job giving so many examples from the scriptures. So now I will ask our Govinda Prabhu raised his hand. Let's see what he has to say.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Good to see you after a while. We're not seeing you for a while. So thank you for a wonderful lecture and choosing a very relevant topic, happiness, which everybody's looking for. My question is, often when we talk to, I can't really say the word non-devotees because everybody's devotees but don't realize they're non-devotees. Somebody is not practicing Krishna consciousness or in particular Bhakti Yoga. When we try to get into conversation that, the activity you nicely mentioned in the beginning, it looks like nectar or honey, and then it's poison at the end.
Yes.
Often, because this process can, when somebody's in that activity, say, for instance, like drinking or some other bad habit.
Yes.
It's a bit difficult to tell them the future, how, because it's not immediate. That bitterness is not immediate. So they're drinking and they're having a good time, or, it takes them for a while, but could you just advise, how do we explain that these activities, okay, they're very nectarian in the beginning, but it will end, have a bitter end. Would you just elaborate, how do we tackle and how do we explain this to the non-practicing?
I would suggest that telling them a little bit ahead in the future that yes, it might appear to be sweet or nectarian, like you said, to begin with, but at the end, it's not. You become das of that or a servant of that bottle. So I have heard that alcohol itself is very bitter to begin with. So I don't know how is it nectarian for them. So maybe we can tell them the facts of do a little bit of research in what alcohol and alcohol's effects are in the real life, so that we can tell them and then include the shastra in there. Because if you were to speak to them chewing the chew and all that, it will be very hard for them to digest that straight away. They will oppose us for sure. I think, in my opinion, I had this question when I used to preach in university a lot, because young people, they indulge themselves in these kind of activities. So we used to give them a research of some doctors or some people who are highly educated about what does alcoholism does, or what will the end result be. Show them a little bit of path that you're going into that sort of direction, and that might be a bit of awakening call for them.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you there. On the cigarette packet, it says smoking is injurious to health.
Yeah.
Health, they still do it. That is, you're right. And if you ask my wife or any doctor and GP who is seeing these patients, they know the effects, parinama, end result, they know it, but they can't control it. They can't control it. The only way is giving prasadam. Then nobody says no to them. In my view, sorry, like this is my perception. Of course, being lovely and giving some prasadam. That's what Prabhupada did, chanting Hare Krishna in the streets and giving these books. So they sometimes know, but they can't control. So we know that the whole medical field says the result of all these activities. Yes. Uh, yeah, so I thought I would
I
chip
think
in there.
giving them the higher taste would be the best.
Yes, higher taste. Good. And Prabhupada has given higher taste for us, and we try to
Yes.
give the lower taste and try to catch it up. And sometimes we we fall down, and then we try to catch it up again.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Any other comments or any other questions from any members? We got Sumedhara Radhika Mataji. Always says something, appreciate, very appreciating, very much for a nice class. You said Krishna should be offered what he likes rather than what we like. So what kind of food does Krishna eat? Milk, butter.
That's another part of research that we should do. That favorite fruit of Srimati Radharani is the plum. So we should offer a plum to Radharani every day. And favorite food, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he likes bananas. So we should offer bananas to him. And Nityananda Prabhu, he likes Varuni. So we should make those kind of food that they like.
Maybe, yes, good. So Prasadam is there. Radhamohan Prabhu, you wants to jump in? Because Radhamohan Prabhu's speciality when it comes to Prasadam. So always Prabhu
Yes.
meditates on what kind of food should be served and what kind of food preparation should be prepared. So he's smiling there, Radhamohan Prabhu.
Yes, this is very interesting and very, when Prasadam topic comes, everybody becomes fully awake, especially when Prasadam is mentioned. So actually, Krishna, he likes any offering, of course it is vegetarian and, certain ingredients are there, but anything which offered with the love and devotion he accepts. So in that way, he has no favorite, everything is his favorite. As long as it is offered with love and devotion, then that's his favorite. He even ate, the banana peel, in the house of Vidur. So for him, that the banana peel was his favorite because it was, given with love and devotion. So anything with love and devotion, he accepts. Doesn't matter, what quality, how he prepared it. So that's philosophical side of it. But Krishna likes idli and dosa when it is cooked in the South Indian household. And he likes dhokla when it is in Gujarati household. If he's a Chinese devotee, then he likes noodles. If he's a Mexican devotee, then he likes nachos and tachos. So Krishna eats everything. When we see in the Rath Yatra, Jagannath, so many offerings are offered to him, and he very happily eats because this is offered with love and devotion. So in Jagannath Puri, nobody offers him tomato or potato, but in Western, when it comes to England and America, there's so many tomatoes and, potato offerings are offered to him. So in that way, whatever is offered to him with love and devotion, he accepts.
Yeah, nice.
I know once, I know one devotee, she offered cereals, Kellogg's cereals to Jagannath. Saying, nobody will offer cereals to Jagannath, but cereals are very good. They taste very nice. So I'll offer it cereal to Jagannath. So that was her love, her devotion that Jagannath should enjoy this.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Prabhu, for bringing that point. Once I heard Bhakti Purushottam Swami speaking about this Prasadam and Jagannath. He was telling that Jagannath got bored with the routine Prasadam. That's why he came to ISKCON, where he can eat pizzas, he can eat all varieties, like, all over the world now, people are offering Chinese, everything is offered. So Jagannath is really now became Jagannath, the universe of the Lord. He became really. So you're right. I think, love and devotion should be there. Patram pushpam palam toyam. Yeah, prasadam topics, we can talk forever, but thank you very much for that. Any other comments, anything from anyone before we end the session here? I'll just make a quick announcement in the meantime. We just got some nice update for all of you. In 2020, we have a team headed by Maria Mataji. You must have seen that Maria Mataji and team, they've been using the temple kitchen and preparing, prasadam and distributing prasadam to various people in Manchester and around Manchester. So they started this program somewhere in the middle of 2020. And and using the temple kitchen, but they were supported by Food for Life, and we have just an update from Maria Mataji saying that in 2020 they distributed 730 meals. 1730. Yeah, 1,730 meals to local hostels, shelters, and more recently to local residents in the area. And they have around 20 volunteers on a rota system to distribute this prasadam. So this is a very nice service Mataji has taken up, and they're using the temple kitchen. Of course, they are supported by various devotees, and also Food for Life is supporting them. So we really appreciate their team, and it's a nice service to Srila Prabhupada. I thought we just update that to you. Hare Krishna. And so we'll see you all on Friday and on Sunday. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaura. Hari Hari Bo.